Hi, in this video we're going to continue on with an application in C# and ASP.NET. So you can see the search results on the screen show me I'm looking at soup. And in this video we're going to create these three buttons that you see here. Show details, edit, and delete. So let's do show details first. Show details will bring up exactly one page with one product. If I go back to the list, I come back to the same list of products. And this time, if I wanted to edit one, I would click the yellow button, which says Edit. And I'm going to bring up the bread and corn muffins idea here in just a second, if my application will get running. And now I get to see an edit form. So if I want to change something, I can say bread, and I'm going to put in good bread. Good is the only change I'm going to make, and choose the Create button, or actually I probably should change that to the Update button. And then you can see I have the updates here. If I want to delete it, I will click the red button, and now bread, good will disappear, and the second item should now be wine. And so you can see the update happens, and now I have wine. So really we're going to complete the application that we started in a previous video, where we have the show, edit, and delete buttons now working. So if you would like to take this as a challenge, you can try to implement this on your own and then come back and watch the videos if you have any problems. One other option that we're going to include here is the Create New Product link, and we can add a new item here. So let's go ahead and add one of these, and it'll show up in our list. If you need some resources to help you figure out how to do these things and a challenge, we can look at somewhere like W3 Schools. You can see they have a SQL tutorial, so how to do an insert, how to do an update, how to do a delete, and then those are the SQL statement that you're going to need. And all you have the rest of it is just to create the controllers and the views, and then maybe you can do it on your own. So if you don't want to do it on your own, let's get started with the code, and I will show you how to do it step by step. So let's switch into the Visual Studio Code, and we'll get started. So let's start with the products DAO. This is really where all the operations of the database occur. And so if you want to do this on your own, these are the things that we're going to have to create. So we're going to have to implement a delete function, it looks like. What else has not been implemented? Get one, so get a single product using its ID number. We're going to have to implement an insert command. And anything else? There's an update command. So that would be the edit button. So those are the commands that are going to be implemented. Now we just have to go through and code them. So the first one I'm going to do is this item right here, which is get products by ID, and we're going to use this to display the details for one single product. So for the code inside of this method, I'm going to borrow the code from another method here. So let's copy and paste from the search form. And what I'm going to do then is just update some things. So for the return type, we are looking for a single item instead of a list of items. So we will have found product as our single variable, and we'll set it to null because we assume we haven't found anything. And of course that will be changed as we do find something. So now the SQL statement looks pretty much the same except for the parameter. The statement is going to be, instead of a where statement where we search for a wildcard and a like statement, we're going to make it exactly equal to the ID number of the item we're looking for. And then a few lines later, when we change the parameters to be defined, then we're going to say that ID, the @ID is now to be equal to ID. Then when we go to the while loop, we can execute the reader, because this is a read operation. And really there's only one item in the while loop, so we can still leave it as a while loop. We have found product instead of a list of products. And then we will pull out the same column numbers, same column names that we did from the search results. And then finally, when we return something, we're going to return a single product. So take a look at all of the details here. This is very similar to searching for something by a search phrase. Instead, though, we're searching for a specific product number. Now let's make this happen in our program. We've got the service here set up. Now we can make it work in the controller. So let's go to the controller next. So the product controller is going to have a new item. So now let's code the method for showing the details of a single product. So this will be similar to the previous code, so you can just use that as a model. So public iActionResult, and we'll call this thing show details, and we want to provide exactly one number, so we'll have the ID number of the product. We're going to have to get a reference to our product DAO, so we'll set that up first of all as call it products. And then we're going to have a product model, and I'll name it found product. And we will use the method called getProductsById, which we just coded just a minute ago. Now once we have that, then we can return the view and send it to this view exactly one product. So the found product again is the parameter. So this should process our request. Now we need to actually create the view so it will display it properly. So to create a view here, let's just right click inside of the method here and choose add view. And let's go to the second option where we have the possibility of using a model. We'll choose add. And we'll call this thing show details. That's a good name for it. The model, let's use the template as the details. And then for the model, let's choose the, what is it called? Product model. Where is that at? There it is. I was staring right at it. Okay, and here we go. Choose add. Okay, it looks like the show details template has already been created. Notice line 1 says we are accepting a product model, and then we will display all of its properties. There is an action item for edit. We don't have an edit function yet, but we will soon. But let's see if this will work. We're going to have to add some access to get to this. Let's go to the index page where all the products are being displayed. And down in this section where we have the Go Somewhere button, we're going to change that to the Details button. So for that Show Details button, let's change the text of the button first of all, and then we will change the method or the action. It's called /product, which is the controller name, and then the action name, which is Show Details, and then we need a parameter, which is the ID number for this product. So @ID or item.id. I think it's ready to test now, so let's run it. All right, the application's up and running, so let's go ahead and search for a product or display all of them. And now we're going to see a list that we can choose details from. All right, so we've got ourselves the program showing all of the products. So let's pick the first one where it says asparagus Mexican and show details and see what comes up. So you can see that the details of the product are here. Also notice in the URL at the top here we have the action of show details, and then the parameter number 2 is for the asparagus, which is ID number 2 here. So we can't edit anything here. That's not the point here. This is just to show the details. If I wanted to edit, I could click here and that would bring me to an edit form if it existed. And then the back to the list should bring me back to the index page, which will show everybody again. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So back in the code here, I'm going to add a new button. So down in the link in the area where we did the show details, I'm going to use that as an example. So let's copy and paste it, and let's change it to another kind of button. So for this item here, I'm just going to change the button text to edit, and then also for the action, let's call it edit as well. And so we need to make this process now in our controller. And so here in the controller, let's go ahead and choose an edit action. So we've got show details as one item, and I'm going to copy that and use it as an example for the next, and we'll call this thing edit. Now this is an action called edit, and I'm going to go look up that product by its ID number, and then use the found product as a parameter. And for the view, I want to show the edit form. So let's just call it show edit form, and then we will send it the found product. Now let's create that edit form. So let's right click here and choose view or add a new view. Choose the usual, or we're going to use a model. So for this thing here, I'm going to call this thing show edit. And then I'm going to give it a name of the, let's see, it's the edit options. And let's choose the model, the product model, and add. Okay, it looks like the code was generated. Now I immediately noticed I made a mistake here. So I created this thing called show edit, and I did not name my controller event that. So let's go into the controller again, and I told it here show edit form was the actual form name. So let's remove the word form, and now it's just show edit. So those have to match. So let's save that. Now in show edit, we have a bunch of things here that allow us to view and then edit the items. So we have a save button, it looks like. At the top, though, we have an action that needs to be updated. The action called show edit is this action that would bring us back to this form. So that really doesn't help us. So let's change that. Instead of show edit, let's make a new event called process edit. And let's see if we can update that. So process edit is an action that doesn't exist yet. So let's go create that. So where is that created? Give you a second to think about that. If you want to pause and create that on your own, please try. Otherwise, let's go ahead and do it together. So process edit is the next thing that I'm trying to make. So I need to put that into the controller. So product controller. And then we need to have a process edit action down here. So I'm going to borrow a previous item and copy and paste it. So this here is called process edit. So a couple of modifications we need to make for this. We're going to call it process edit. We're going to then accept a product item. So we're expecting to see a product model as a parameter. And then for the references here, we're going to use the products DAO. We are going to get an update function. So products.update is the method that we just created or we need to create, it looks like. So update doesn't exist yet, but we can code that. Then we're going to go into the view called index. When we're done here, I'm just going to redisplay all of the products. So index is the item that I want to direct the user to, and then we have to provide that with an entire list of all the products. So once again, products.getAllProducts. Okay, so we need a method for update. Where do we find that? So the products DAO is this action that we're trying to identify here. So products DAO, let's see if we have anything for update. I doubt if we do. So we have an update method, but we have no code in it. So that's what we're going to do next. So let's delete this. Now, just to refresh your memory on what an update looks like, I'm going to go to a reference here like W3 Schools and search for SQL updates. So the item that we're looking for is this. So update table name, set column equals value, and you do that as many times as you have columns. And then you have a where condition. So in our case, it's probably where an ID number matches a specific parameter. So we're going to use this as our SQL statement. Now let's see if we can adapt that to our case. So once more, I'm going to start with some starting code that it was stolen from a previous method. So I'm going to copy the previous and paste it into here. We are going to do the update command, and this here obviously has to change. All right, so let's go ahead and update some of the code. So instead of starting with a new assumed found product, we are going to create an integer variable that will be returned. Now this here is going to be called the new ID number. So if for some reason the ID number changes, it will return that. Now the SQL statement is going to be update. So let's erase this current statement that we have here and change it to update products table, set the name equals to @name. Remember the @ symbol is our parameter. Price equals @price, description equals @description. And now the condition, where. So the where ID equals the ID number comes from another parameter. So now down in the parameters where we are going to define these, we are going to define each of them as part of the parameter that was sent to us. So name, @name, is going to be assigned to be coordinated with product.name. Now remember, product is the parameter up here at the top of the method. So price is going to be equal product.price, description corresponds to product.description, and ID corresponds to product.id. So all of these should match our SQL statement. Now down here lower in the try area, we're going to pretty much remove everything here and replace it. So we are going to run a new command. It's called command.execute. And execute doesn't exist, but we do have something similar, execute scalar. So scalar means it will return a value, which should be the first column of whatever was changed here, updated. So that's the ID number. Now I'd like to assign that to the new ID number and then return that new ID number at the end of our method. So all of this here should work, except we can see we have a underscore. We've got some red text here, so it doesn't like this. So it says we're going to execute, in the notes here it says we're going to execute the query, return the first column of the first row of the results. So that should be the ID number. That's the first column. So it says you're trying to assign this to an integer, and you can't do that. There's an object here. That's what it says at the bottom. Cannot implicitly convert object to an integer. Are you missing a cast? So I would be tempted just to show the potential fixes and choose the cast and say we have an integer. So let's run the application and see how this works. So I've got asparagus Mexican as my first item in the list. I'm going to try the edit button and see how this works. So I've got the edit form up here, no problem so far. Let's put in here another item. So let's go in here and put in tasty, and let's see if I can spell it right. And then I'm going to try the save button. Now here I think we're going to see an error. So sure enough, we're going to stop the program, and we have an exception. Down here we have an error on line 128. So it was unable to do the cast. We can see the value of new ID number is -1. So something didn't go right here. So I need a different statement rather than just casting as an integer. So let's stop the program here. So what I need instead is an item called convert. And I can do a convert to integer 32, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to convert whatever this thing was, some kind of a string, and put it into a new ID number. Let's see if we can run that and see if we can avoid the problem. Okay, we got the application running again. Let's go ahead and choose the products list. And let's go and make an edit change and see if the edit works now. Okay, the application is up and running. You can see that the tasty Mexican version is now displayed. So obviously the edit function worked. My database is updated, but I had some kind of a new ID number problem. Let's go ahead and edit this again. You know, I really don't like asparagus at all, so I'm just going to change this to tacos because everyone likes tacos. And let's change the price to like $10 and see if we can watch the change. So save it. So this time we're done, and we do have tasty tacos coming up here at $10, and you can see the picture updated because we changed the name. So this here is a successful update. So now here in the index file, where we're showing an entire list of our products, I'm going to add a new button. So I want to do a delete command. So let's copy and paste our edit command, and let's change it into a delete button. So we will change this from the edit to delete, and let's see action. Let's go with that as well. So delete, and we can provide an ID number. That should work. Now these primary items here can be changed to something else, so we have a different color. Let's see if our choices are, let's try, I think there's one called warning. That's a yellow one. And then for danger, I believe they call it, is a red button. So danger and delete kind of match together. Okay, so we have a delete action that is required. So let's save this and switch into our controller. Now we need a delete function here. So we don't have that. Let's go ahead and create it. I'm going to use process edit as my model and change this to delete. So instead of a product number, I've promised it that I'm going to give you an integer for the ID number. We're going to do a delete command here. And I believe, oh, it says we need an entire product here. So let's go with the word product. So we need to get a product from our database, and we'll save that into a variable called product. And then we can pass it along to our delete method. And away it goes. Then we can display everything again on the page. So this won't work yet because I don't believe we've done any work on the product DAO. So this here method does not run anything yet. So let's go check it out. Is there a delete method in the house? Let's go scroll through here until we find a delete. Let's see, I don't see it. There's an update. There's an insert. There's a get all. Oh, here it is, the first one. So delete needs to have something created. Well, let's see if I have anything at all that looks like that. So the update method kind of looks like it. So I'm going to copy our update, and let's use that as our starting point. So let's make a few modifications. First of all, we have to change the SQL statement, obviously. we're going to change that to a delete. So delete from the products table where the ID number equals a certain parameter. So since we only have one parameter, we can delete the other parameter associations and just leave the ID. Then we are going to return something if we are successful as the new ID number. Let's see if this works. Okay, the application is running, so I'm going to delete something. Let's try this one here, the second item. So the wine. We'll leave tacos alone, and we expect flowers to come next, so pick something and choose the red delete button. So if you are successful, you should see that the item disappears and then the grid is redisplayed. You can see that the URL up here was correct, where it says we're going to run the delete command for product ID number 6 in my case, which was the one that I chose. And so it redisplays the table and all of the products now, including the one, or I guess excluding the one that I just deleted. So now there's one thing missing here. So at the top of the screen, I left a link for Create New. If I click that, I will probably find a problem. So as you can see, product/create doesn't exist. So there is no method for that, there's no view for that, and there's nothing in the database handler for creating anybody new. So guess what? I have to leave something as a challenge for you. You're probably tired of watching me anyway. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to implement the create button. So let's look at some of the things that you're going to have to do to make this happen. So if we are going to create, that is the insert command. So somewhere in my product DAO, I have an unimplemented method called insert, and it's expecting a product. Well, to make an insert happen, we have to have an insert form. So where do you create the forms and the actions that go with that? So that would go into the products controller. So we are going to have something similar to what we did with the search form. So the first thing you'll do, instead of search form, let's call this thing input form. Then you're going to have to create a view called the input form. And then for the processing of that, we are going to have something like this. Instead of process edit, I'm going to copy that and let's put it next to the input. And so I'm going to maybe call this thing, instead of process edit, we'll call it process create or process new item. And then you're going to go through, instead of an update, you're going to have a different statement called insert. And then we can display it again. So those are some of the hints. But I want to make sure that you have something to do on your own, because doing some research is probably a better way than just watching me code. If you need a little help on how to get the insert command, go look it up in a reference like W3 Schools. And the command that you're looking for inserting is this one right here. So insert into table name, and then you have a bunch of table names and then followed by the values. So use your resources and then figure out how to finish that insert command. So when you're done, you'll have the full functioning CRUD operations. You'll have create, read, update, and delete. And that will bring you to the end of this activity. So we've spent a lot of time working on this products tool, but when you review what you've created, it's pretty significant. You created a database, you created an interface that has many forms, you created a model, you created several types of forms that can handle operations. So this is a complete tutorial application. Now this is written assuming that we're going to write our own SQL statements. There is another method where a lot of shortcuts are made using a relational object mapper. An ORM is the tool here, and the entity framework is another process for using SQL statements. So what is all this entity framework and ORMs and all that? So I have the tutorial, and I'll leave you the link in the below, where you can see the shortcuts for creating the tables for you automatically. So a lot of people would work that way. Some would work the way that we've shown here, where you write your own SQL statements. There are advantages to each, and so if you want to look into the other, I'll leave the link like I said. But if we're finished here, we're going to move on to another tutorial where we create a game, and we're going to have a more interactive type of a playing board with pieces on the board. That will prepare you for an assignment that I'm going to give you called Minesweeper. We're going to create a Minesweeper application with interactive items on the screen, and we'll keep track of it all using this ASP.NET framework. So that's what's coming ahead. So in the meantime, try your insert command. That's the challenge, and I'll see you in the next video.